Welcome to No More Desire, where we build a mindset and lifestyle for lasting recovery from porn. My name's Jake Castleman, and I'm excited to dive in with you. Let's get started, my friend.
There are so many reasons why parts of us may be self-sabotaging. Any behavior that is self-sabotaging is a burdened behavior. It's not the fundamentally positive nature of that part of us. And there are so many different reasons why parts can become burdened, and we can't really know until we ask them. The behaviors that our parts are engaged in, they're seeking after things that aren't their actual needs. The actual need is not to look at the porn or eat the cookies or drink the wine or shop for the shoes. The actual need is comfort, excitement, or connection. The need underneath it is the important thing to hear so that we can try to meet that need in a much more effective way. Because at the end of the day, the burdened attempt to meet that need is always trying to help, and it always makes it worse.
Before we dive in, a quick heads up. If you're tired of trying to quit porn on your own and ending up back in the same cycle over and over, the No More Desire Academy is now open. Most men don't stay stuck because they lack willpower, my friend. They stay stuck because they don't have an effective system yet that they're following. The Academy has been in development for years as I've worked with men throughout the world. It is my new structured recovery program for men who want more than just information or accountability. Inside, I help men build lasting freedom using weekly coaching, a private brotherhood, practical tools, and step-by-step training. These help you get to the root of cravings, relapse, and the deeper patterns that are keeping you stuck. This is for men who are ready to stop fighting alone and start building recovery alongside other men in a structured recovery path. When you join before May 1st, you will lock in the founding member rate of $130 per month for life. After that, the price goes up to $150. Head to nomordesire.com/academy to learn more. All right, back to the episode. What is it about human nature that makes us return to the behaviors that hurt us? Why does telling ourselves no often lead to us doing it anyway? And what is the psychology behind behaviors like self-sabotage and addiction? Here's the paradoxical approach we discuss in today's episode. And that is that painful emotions like fear or anger and triggering feelings like cravings can actually be used as trailheads for success in recovery. Overcoming addiction means learning to open up to these emotions and fully engage them. In today's episode, I'm joined by Jenna Riemersma, licensed professional counselor, certified level 3 IFS therapist, and best-selling author of All Together You, a book that has been a significant part of my own recovery journey. Jenna is one of the leading voices in internal family systems. Her work has helped countless people understand themselves with clarity, compassion, and hope. And she's perhaps the biggest name in Christian internal family systems therapy. In this conversation, we unpack the hidden emotional patterns driving addiction, the inner battle between different parts of ourselves, why triggers can actually become trailheads for healing, and how Jenna's simple but powerful 3-step framework of notice, know, and need can help us respond to pain in a way that leads to recovery. And I must say, it is a brilliantly simple system. This episode is launching at the dawn of Jenna's new book, Move Toward, a powerful work that makes IFS therapy approachable for anyone. So, if you've been exhausted by the cycle of relapse, self-criticism, and emotional avoidance, this episode is going to give you language, tools, and perspective that empower your recovery. Before we dive in, a reminder to follow and rate this podcast so that others looking for help can find it. And make sure to hit that notification button so that you can keep finding it. All right, let's get started. Jenna, welcome. You are a hero of mine. You're in the space of IFS that means so, so much to me. It's changed my personal life. It's changed so many of the lives of men that I work with. So thank you for being here. It's a privilege.
Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So many of us, today we're centering this episode on, of course, your book, which we're going to talk a lot more about, your book that's coming out in April when this episode will launch. But we're talking about the purpose in painful emotion, especially with reference to addiction. And many of us are taught in kind of our current society to escape or suppress or fix or think positive our way out of painful emotions. But your work introduces a counterintuitive approach for a lot of us, which is to move toward every emotion. And this is the title of your new book, Move Toward, launching in April of 2026. You break this down into a very practical approach that anyone can use. So today we're going to talk about how this works, how anyone can do it, the basics of what your book teaches. And to start off, for those people who don't know you and your work, I want you to just talk a bit more about the work you do, this book coming out, and the details there.
I'd be glad to. So, I'm a CSAT supervisor and teaching faculty for ITAP. So, that's one of my clinical worlds, working with compulsive behavior and betrayal trauma. And I'm also a certified IFS therapist and IFS clinical consultant. So, I get to live in the world of internal family systems. And it's a real joy of mine to bring those two worlds together. And the gift of being able to do that is to invite people to take the hardest parts of themselves and move toward them rather than fighting against them. Because let's be real, fighting against the parts of ourselves that are feeling and doing the things that are the most difficult doesn't usually work. And it often makes our struggles worse. And counterintuitively, when we move toward them with a little curiosity and compassion, we can get to know the important messages that our painful feelings and behaviors have for us. And it turns out, based on the work of Dr. Richard Schwartz, that that's a much more effective way to help them transform.
Yes, yes. I wondered, Jenna, if you can share a bit about your story and what led you here to do this work, because I think it's a wonderful story, and you shared more with me in our initial meeting, but it's so meaningful. Could you share some of that with people and what brought you here?
Well, I could get off in the weeds with a
Sure.
very long story. I will avoid that, but let's just say the short version is that I never intended to be a therapist or an author or anything in this sort of genre of life. I started out my professional life with a degree in public policy working on Capitol Hill. And I just kept having a sequence of events that led me at midlife to start a whole new career trajectory and become a therapist. And then, quite reluctantly, also to enter into book writing. And it's now, of course, such a joy of mine. I can't imagine doing anything else. I love it. But there was a convoluted series of events that got me here for sure.
Yes. And altogether, you, again, as we discussed before, that book, especially when it comes to spiritualize your parts and just the Christian end of all this and understanding, you know, a lot of the kinds of toxic patterns that can go on with us emotionally and how these play into addiction as well. It was such a meaningful book to me.
Mm.
Very, very good. And this, again, this concept of move toward is something I use every day with my own emotions and with my clients. It's so, so good. So, kind of opening into that, in your experience, I want to open up this conversation. What are the primary emotional patterns that keep us addicted? So my audience is primarily pornography, sex addiction. You're very familiar with this as a CSAT and having done this for many years. Perhaps specifically when it comes to porn and also in general, what are these emotional patterns that keep us in this cycle of addiction?
Sure. Well, I think it's important to really start out by saying that obviously compulsive behavior of any type is complex and multifaceted. And anytime we're wanting to address compulsive behavior, we always want to be looking out for underlying diagnoses, for any neuro differences that might be present. And also acknowledge that, particularly with the world of online compulsive behavior, the content and the graphic nature of online content is such that the brain can very quickly develop a habitualized pattern of repetition seeking. So there's many things that we look at here, but the kind of high level piece that I like to encourage people to be curious with is what we call in addiction work or betrayal trauma work, the trigger. So the trigger that comes up and causes the part of us that wants to act out in a certain way to take over. And usually that trigger is a painful emotion, cognition, something along the lines of shame. I'm all alone. I'm powerless. There's no one here for me. If you really knew me, you wouldn't love me. Something's wrong with me. Those types of messages and feelings. And it's so helpful, I think, to realize that when those triggers take us over, they're not all of who we are. They're a part of us that's gotten activated in that moment for a particular reason. And usually we approach this trigger management, handling triggers with an approach of sort of fighting against it. So here's a way to push it down, squash it, grin and bear it until we can get through, the activation, force our mind to go somewhere else. And those all have their place and can be helpful in certain situations. But I like to really encourage us to turn fully toward whatever the trigger might be and really become curious about it. What is this part of me that holds these feelings and beliefs? And how long has this part of me been carrying that? And I wonder what this part might want me to know. And it can be very helpful to think of it rather than as a battle we have to fight against ourselves, as an invitation into a deeper relationship with ourselves. And it turns out that it's relationship, not control, that truly is transformational.
Let's talk more about this relationship rather than control, because I think it's so important. So tell people more about what you mean when you say that.
So this is a beautiful phrase from C. Sykes, who is a lead IFS trainer. And for folks who aren't familiar with IFS and are interested in knowing more about it and the way that it applies to addiction, I highly commend Cease's work to you. And
She's
I
great.
love this. Yes, she is wonderful. And I love this phrase that she uses, that it's about getting in relationship with the most difficult parts of ourselves, not getting in control of them. And what that does is it completely reframes our approach to our inner struggles. And I think it's important always to underline, boldface, italicize. That does not mean that what we're saying is that what these difficult parts of us are feeling or doing is okay or not problematic. It is definitely not. What it is saying is that when we approach these parts of ourselves with curiosity and compassion and connection, it's actually more effective in helping them transform, and it tells us what messages they hold for us. And as long as we're fighting against them, we lose the opportunity to learn the gift of the message that they are bringing. And I think that's a really powerful shift in how we approach triggers, addiction, compulsive behavior, and recovery.
Yes. 100%. It's very true. And I know you're talking about triggers, and I love the phrase "triggers are trailheads." Right? That concept changed my life, because I think there is this message out there that's very predominant, which is triggers are bad. Avoid triggers. Don't feel them. You want to get away from those because they will weaken you. When in reality, engaging with, if you know how, right, and you have
Yes.
the some basics for the approach and a practice that works, like Move Toward, then they can grow you. They're actually trailheads for deeper self-understanding and development. Very, very powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You also use the phrase in Altogether You, well, I think it might be originally Richard Schwartz, but tormentors, like the
Mhm.
the things that we go through that are the torments in our lives are actually mentors for us, which I think is also.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful phrase coined by Dr. Richard Schwartz, that it is exactly the things that are tormenting us that are actually an invitation to us to be mentored by what they have to teach us. And there's another wonderful phrase in IFS that it just is so helpful. What's in the way is the way.
Mm, mm,
What's in the way is the way. And what I find, and especially working in the field of addiction and compulsive behaviors before I came to IFS, is the approach that I would usually take. What I was trained to do is to try to eliminate or lock in the basement or shame and vilify the things that were in the way. And there were a lot of lost opportunities there to get to know what it was those things were trying to bring to our awareness, and also why they keep coming up. Because when our approach is to fight against them, that might work for a little while, but if that's all that we do, they tend to fight back. And that's why we have, I think, such high rates of relapse and chronicity of behavior, is because when we just try to lock a part of ourselves away in the basement, it doesn't tend to appreciate that, and it tends to burst out and take us over again, which then tends to activate our internal critic and the part of us that wants us to stop it. And we just get into this inner battle that's really, really painful, and it increases our suffering rather than decreasing the behavior that we'd like to change.
yes. Yeah, let's talk more about this inner battle, actually, between this manager firefighter polarization as it is, right? Because this is one that early on in my recovery, actually 11 years ago, when I started to really make headway, I started noticing the perfectionism that I carried,
Mm.
the massive expectations. I was always like this. And I actually in my early 20s, realized that my shoulders were up like
Mm.
this all the time. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
from I don't know when I started doing it, probably as a kid,
Mm.
as a small child. And I realized I started to actually practice resting my shoulders and bringing them down. I had so much tightness. So all that perfectionism, I realized as I worked on that, my cravings for addiction began decreasing. And that I
Mm.
didn't have any vocabulary for that at the time. I had no education for that at the time. But I learned about that
Mm.
later, right, through multiple areas, including IFS is the biggest framework for me that really taught me. So let's discuss more about that.
I think you're making such an important point, and I know we're speaking as though your listeners are very familiar with IFS. So I hope that's the case. I hope this is making sense
I
as we use jargon like managers and firefighters.
I talk about it a lot, but there's also people who are new, I'm sure. So
Mhm.
we can kind of cover the basics of manager versus firefighter, and then how these parts battle and what that looks like.
Absolutely. So for people who can see the video portion of what we're doing, internal family systems, or IFS, developed by Dr. Richard Schwartz, is really a way of understanding ourselves that's quite different from how we typically view ourselves. So, a way that we can typically view ourselves is I am one thing, I am a monolith. And that has some advantages. So, if a part of us is feeling or doing something, we tend to over identify with it. So, we'll say, I am anxious, or I am a people pleaser, or I am an addict. And I really do feel that sometimes that can be beneficial to people to really identify, especially for folks who resonate deeply with a 12-step approach, to finally kind of utter these words, I am an addict. And it can be helpful because you're in a room full of people who are similarly articulating that. And it can really be de-shaming, that you feel like, oh, I'm not alone. Or even that the part of oneself that is engaged in the addictive behavior almost has a place at the table, almost as though we're speaking for it. So that's one way of viewing ourselves, is that I am this one thing. And so if I'm engaged in a behavior that I don't like, or I'm feeling a feeling that I don't like, or that I do like, um, then, I am such a perfectionist. Oh, I'm a workaholic. That's often something people see as a badge of honor. It's the only addiction that people tend to like to identify with. But either way, we see ourselves in that one way. IFS has a different way of helping us to understand ourselves. It's got a little bit more nuance, a little bit more complexity, and a lot of people find it helpful. The idea being that who we truly are kind of would be represented by this heart. That at our core, at our essence, who we truly are is what IFS refers to as self with a capital S, kind of our authentic self. Spiritual traditions have different words for this: the God image, or the Imago Dei, the Buddha nature, Atman, Chi. There's many ways to describe it, but it's that core essence that is loving, wise, centered, calm, clear minded, courageous, compassionate, and it's always present. And then we have many different parts of ourselves that make up our unique personalities. And those parts of us are different person to person to person, because we all have different personalities. Um, but they make up who we are. And let's just say that this little blue ball represents one part of this individual. And if I had lots and lots of hands, I'd have lots and lots of blue balls. And these parts of us are all positive. They all bring inherently positive attributes to our inner worlds. But what happens is, when we go through life and difficult things occur, they become burdened as if a blanket is thrown over them. And so let's say that this part of us was the attribute of playfulness. If we're shamed for playfulness and being messy, it may get covered over by a blanket or a burden of shame. And so now we don't have access to the playfulness. It's still there. But now, when this part takes us over and gets triggered, so to speak, all we can feel is the shame. And so notice in IFS, this is a very different concept than I just am filled with so much shame, versus a part of me, a good part of me, has become burdened carrying shame. And sometimes it gets triggered and takes me over. So that's kind of the idea of how parts become burdened. And our vulnerable parts that get burdened with vulnerable feelings that tend to drive addictive tendencies like shame, powerlessness, worthlessness, brokenness, loneliness, those are called exiles, because everything in us wants to exile them. And then we have parts that take on burdens or get covered with those blankets, who are trying to help us never have to feel those exile feelings. One group does it proactively. They're called the managers, because they try to manage our lives. The other group does it reactively. Those are called firefighters, because they're trying to come in and put out the fire. So rather than seeing ourselves as just one lump of humanity, one lump of human, we actually have quite a bit of dimensionality, and that there are many different parts inside of us. And those parts are often at war. And it's the warring of those parts that causes our suffering. So that leads us to this concept that you described of polarization, where the manager parts are working hard to help us not feel the pain of our exiles by doing things like people pleasing, overworking, perfectionism. The inner critic is in there. Our spiritualizer parts are good parts trying to help us do it right spiritually. They're stuck in bad roles, meaning they're trying to do something they're not powerful enough or designed to do, using God language, God behaviors, churchy activities, to make us good enough for God, to get us on over there closer to God. And that's distinct from this core self that we talked about, that's our authentic connection to the divine. And that's in a very simplified sort of way of understanding that. All parts of us also have an essence, a divine essence inside of them. And those parts tend to want us to get sober, do it right, be a good church person, work really hard, keep everything very, very, very shiny. And the harder they work to suppress the pain of our exiles, the more the firefighters have to come in when the managers fail and the exiles flare up. And the managers the firefighters are the parts that come in with the compulsive behaviors, looking at porn, drinking alcohol, compulsive shopping, binge eating, suicidal ideation, dissociating, blame shifting, all of those dynamics. And so what we tend to do is get our manager parts to try to get rid of the firefighters. And so the firefighter will take over, act out to try to soothe some shame or some sense of being alone. And then the critic will jump up, or the spiritualizer, and yell at the firefighter and try to get it to stop it. I'm never going to drink again. I'm never going to look at that again. I'm never going to do this again. And round they go. And the more they battle, the more intense the battle gets. That is why addiction is described as an escalating, quote, disease, because every time that they go through that little battleground of managers activating exiles, which then activates the firefighters, which then activates the managers, all the parts get more and more burdened, which means they're carrying more and more pain, which requires the managers and the firefighters to work harder. So our critic has to yell louder. The firefighter has to look at more porn or at more intense porn or act out with a person instead of a pixel, and on it goes in this escalating battle. What we do in IFS is we actually say, rather than trying to battle these parts of ourselves, the healing begins here in this authentic self, this connection to the greater divine. And when parts of us get triggered and take us over, rather than fighting them, we actually try to get to know them and develop a relationship with the authentic self. So the self can get curious about what's going on for them when they became burdened, and can really help them to unburden and transform back to their fundamentally positive state. So it was a really quick overview of IFS and how complicated it can be.
Done. It's well done for such a complex system, right? It's simple in ways, but it has a lot of complexity. Yes.
It does. Yeah. But it really helps us to see that the parts of us that are trying to help us avoid pain by doing everything perfectly are actually a really important piece of the dynamic that is fueling the acting out, because the acting out is polarized with the parts that are the inner critic and the ones that are trying to do it perfectly, and the parts that are trying to get us to stop it, whatever it is. Quit eating all the Oreos, or drinking all the wine, or buying all the shoes. And they're an important part of the equation to take into consideration.
Yes. I definitely want to get to this core concept of your book, Move Toward, because I think it's so powerful in breaking this down in just the 3-step system. And we will do that. But here's a question that I have about what you've just shared, because I think that this will be powerful for people. The way I understand it, all 3 of these parts in roles, right? Manager, firefighter, exile, all kind of develop at once. But I would love to hear your perspective on that. The managers can activate exiles. In other words, exile, a part of me that carries these burdens of shame, of fear, of grief that are kind of unconscious, but also come out into the conscious. The managers will criticize or berate or say, "Why aren't you better? Stop being weak." And then the firefighters will come in and say, "Whoa, stop all that. We're going to take our foot off the gas and we're just going to check out here." How do you see, is it the exile that develops first? Is it the self-criticizing? Kind of, what does that dynamic look like for people?
It's a great question, and I'll answer in an overly simplified way, because there are certainly what we call legacy burdens that are handed down generationally that we're sort of born with.
Right.
And those can be any of the 3, managers, firefighters, or exiles. But typically speaking, the tender parts of us that get wounded first with wounded vulnerabilities like shame, fear, aloneness, that sort of thing, those are the exiles. We don't need an inner critic or a firefighter to jump in and try to bring us relief. unless there's some part of us holding pain. If we don't have shame, we don't need a critic yelling at us to make us do it better. If we don't have a part of us that feels alone or unwanted, we won't need a firefighter to jump in and try to soothe that. So really, it's the exile, or what we call in the clinical world, this is the deeper trauma work, that if all we try to do is, quote, get sober or stop it, and we don't look at what's driving it, we don't unburden or heal those exiles that are driving the compulsive behavior and the people pleasing, spiritualizing, perfectionism, overworking. We really are missing the bigger picture, and our chances for really prolonged sobriety and then recovery are really limited. So the exiles definitely tend to come first.
Yeah. And I think it's so powerful to say too, kind of going back to this concept of there's a divine essence in all parts. That was something that it has to be experienced, right? This is an experiential work. It's one thing to understand it conceptually, but I know for me, working with a couple of my primary parts that were involved with my addiction, one part trying to bring me comfort, another part trying to bring me excitement or pleasure, right, through porn, or through, a couple of the other addictions I dealt with years ago as well. This is, one of them is like a peacemaker part that values comfort and bringing comfort both to myself and to others around me, and developing that part. It's been such sometimes now it's my advisor, right? And hey, you got to slow down, and you're going too fast. You're putting too much pressure on yourself. And then that other part that was seeking the pleasure and the excitement is an adventurer that wants me to push myself to new limits and pursue dreams and do stuff that feels crazy because I've got to live and be excited. And I love these parts of me so much. And there used to just be terrible internal battles in me for years. And I can still get back there, right? Sometimes when these parts move back into their roles, but more and more, they're just so helpful and so good. And to hear that they have that divine essence as well is something that I've come to experience myself. It's a powerful truth, powerful truth. Before we get back to the show, I want to take a few minutes to share a story of one of my clients. Because if you're someone who's been battling with porn addiction yourself and feeling stuck, I think that you'll relate to this. My client Gabe came to me discouraged about the impact his porn use was having on his life. It got in the way of his productivity at work, made him feel more distant from his wife and kids, and caused him to experience brain fog, lack of motivation, and a lack of confidence. All things that I relate to deeply and personally. Gabe was a good man. He valued his family, served his community, he had a good job, and he had ambition. He could even get a decent streak of sobriety sometimes, but nothing long-lasting. Gabe's problem was not discipline. It was a lack of knowledge and skill. He didn't understand how to regulate his emotions and train his nervous system properly, so that cravings, anger, and other painful emotions could be moved through effectively. By the time he finished my program, Gabe had 5 months of sobriety without a single relapse. His perspective on life had changed dramatically, and for the first time, he felt fully connected and in harmony with his principles and who he was. I'll share a few of his words directly. I would leave every session with Jake feeling like my eyes had been opened to a new level of understanding that changed my self-talk, my relationship with my spouse, and my ability to connect with my children. The program felt incrementally tailored to my needs and had the exact building blocks I needed to live a sober lifestyle and mindset. I've kept in touch with Gabe since then. His success has continued, and he is now 7 months sober. Gabe's story is one of many men who've joined my intensive coaching program and experienced sobriety. If you want to join these men, dig deep, and finally be sober for good, head to nomoredesire.com/program to learn more. Back to the show. So I'd love to get into, apologize if I'm stepping forward on this, but notice, know, need. Great framework, simple for anybody to do. Let's dive into that. This is shared in your book. So let's just go into what that means and how people can do this on a daily basis.
Yeah, well, one of the things I've noticed as a therapist who trains other therapists and has been in the field for a while now, working with clients, is that people who connect with this idea, which is most people that hear it, really want to be able to engage this, but it seems a little bit complicated, a little bit nebulous. Like, how do we exactly do this thing? So, my new book, Move Toward, I wrote to specifically teach us in really concrete ways. Here are 3 simple steps to help you to move toward these parts of yourself so that you can do exactly what you just talked about. If there's a part of you that has gotten stuck or burdened in an unhelpful role of looking at porn because it's trying to soothe, when you get to know it and it unburdens, you learn, oh, this is a good part of me that's actually its divinely ordained nature is to help soothe and nurture me when I am out of balance or there's stress in my life. It's actually a really important part to know how to listen to rather than fight against. So, what we can do with this approach is simply when we are triggered, which means we no longer feel calm, clear minded, connected, courageous, compassionate. We feel anxious, ashamed, alone. We feel like acting out. We feel dissociated. If we feel any of those qualities that wouldn't be representative of our authentic self, then we simply notice that and we notice it with some curiosity. One thing that I like to do is say, gosh, I'm noticing there's a part of me that's present right now that's feeling some shame, that's carrying the burden of shame. And even just by saying that out loud, and often just like I'm doing here in the video, I'll almost extend my hand in front of me to visually give the energy of that part of me kind of a place to go to help separate a little bit from it. And even just using that language, there's a part of me here that's feeling shame, or there's a part of me here that's feeling like behaving compulsively. There's a part of me here that's feeling like raging, blame shifting, eating all the cookies, buying all the shoes, whatever it might be. That in and of itself creates a little bit of this helpful separation, not so that that part of us will go away, but so that we can separate enough to connect with who we truly are to begin to build relationship with it. If it's completely taking us over and all we feel is the feelings of that part or the thoughts of that part, then we can't have a helpful relationship. There has to be me and a part to have a helpful relationship. So we notice it with some curiosity first. Then we literally ask the shame, the anxiety, the compulsive behavior, what do you want me to know? What do you want me to know about you? What do you want me to know about how you're trying to help me, or why you got triggered just now, or when in my life you first started feeling or doing this thing? And we just kind of ask, and we don't try to figure out the answer. We just notice that, the answer will kind of naturally emerge in our system often. We'll get a memory or a sense of something. And once we've kind of gotten a sense of whatever that part of us wants us to know, then we can just ask that gentle question, is there anything that you need from me? And that's important, from me, my authentic self, not from the world around me or my partner or my parents or any of that. Is there anything you need from me right now to feel a little more comforted, a little less activated? And that's a beautiful question because the behaviors that our parts are engaged in, they're seeking after things that aren't their actual needs. The actual need is not to look at the porn or eat the cookies or drink the wine or shop for the shoes. The actual need is comfort or excitement or connection. The need underneath it is the important thing to hear so that we can try to meet that need in a much more effective way. Because at the end of the day, the burdened attempt to meet that need, the burdened behavior is always trying to help, and it always makes it worse.
Mhm.
So if the need is connection and the burdened behavior is looking at porn, the desire is wonderful. It's for connection. The behavior is making that pain worse. Now looking at the porn, and then you feel more alone and more unlovable afterwards. And so the true need is made worse by the burdened behavior.
Yeah, protectors
Yeah.
always cause the problem that they're seeking to fix. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that is very, very aptly described, and a powerful framework that I'm sure you go into far more detail in your book, Move Toward, but Notice No Need.
Yeah.
Such a great framework for people to use on a daily
Mm.
basis. I wanted to move a little more into this concept of, you see this in a lot of ways with addiction, but
Mm.
self-sabotage. Self-sabotage, ultimately, addiction is a self-sabotaging behavior, right? Is
Mm.
one lens to see it through, or one component of it. Why do we get into this pattern of self-sabotage? Probably on a deeper level, why is that?
Mm.
And how can we start to come out of it using notice no need?
This is a really important question because there are so many reasons why parts of us may be self sabotaging. And remember, any behavior that is self sabotaging is a burdened behavior. It's not the fundamentally positive nature of that part of us. And there are so many different reasons why parts can become burdened. And we can't really know until we ask them, until we get into relationship with them. And that's why noticing with some curiosity when that part that's self sabotaging takes over to get a little relational connection to it, and then finding out what it wants us to know and what it really needs will give us the answer to that question. So let me give you a hypothetical example that would be typical of a client that I might work with. A part that would, let's see, if we stay within the realm of addiction, the self sabotaging nature of pornography viewing, let's say, might emerge anytime the primary relationship got too close. And in that case, it may be that what this part is afraid would happen is if I get too intimate, too vulnerable in this relationship that matters so much to me, I'm ultimately going to get rejected and that's too painful of a reality. So I'm actually going to sabotage it first before that perceived or feared reality can come to be. And in the line of thinking of this burdened part, it's better for me to sabotage this relationship before I'm seen and intimately known and rejected. And that could be one reason. Another completely different type of self sabotage could be let's see, someone who is wanting to step out into the world more boldly. This would be kind of on that manager side of things, where maybe a manager part is trying to push us to build a career or a business or get out there on social media or take this risk or write this book or start this podcast, whatever it might be. And a procrastinating part may jump in, or a part that jumps in and daydreams or organizes the closet instead of working on the business proposal. I mean, hypothetically, not that any of us would ever do that. But when in that case, when those parts come in and take over and we get to know them, we notice them with curiosity so we can get in relationship. And then we get to know what's going on with them. Sometimes the fear is I have to sabotage that big effort that you're working on because if you get out in the world is going to hurt you. You're not going to succeed. And that's going to be more painful than if I just get you distracted so you can't ever try. So the positive intent underneath that self sabotaging behavior is trying to limit the pain. And of course, how it's making it worse is then we're stuck in a loop of not living up to our desires, our potential, our calling, and it's actually making that pain worse. So there's so many different ways. Those are just two small examples of ways that parts of us can self-sabotage. And until we get to know those parts and literally ask them, and get a sense of how are you trying to help me? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't distract me from working on this project? If you didn't take me over and make me act out in this way? The answer to that tells us the positive intention of that part. And once we know how the part is trying to help, we can help it to unburden, which is beyond the scope of this conversation, but we can help it to be restored to its naturally positive state. And a lot of times, those parts that were self sabotaging actually want to be cheerleading us in their naturally positive state. What they're designed to do, and when we unburden them, what they will do for us is actually encourage us to wisely step out in those risks.
Yes. Oh, it's so good. And I think of two examples of this. One, when it comes to relationships and feeling like we're getting too close, maybe I'll get
Mhm.
hurt, is another type of addiction, if you will, or another behavior that can be very destructive: aggression or anger, right? I
Mhm.
have found in my own life, and I know that there's men that I work with, where anger will come in because I am getting closer and there's things are actually going well in my relationship. And then a sabotaging part comes in to start some kind of drama or some kind of conflict. And then afterwards, I'm just loaded with this shame and the sad, like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, things were going so well. And at times when I've taken time just to journal and do parts work or meditate upon, what happened, I found those parts. It's like, oh my gosh, I was getting closer to my wife, and part of me was very afraid that that relationship, we might end up getting too close, and that might lead to uh, deeper hurt in the future, right? It would be reflective of relationships I had in my youth, right? Or in my childhood, right? Maybe that pain could be repeated.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that I didn't understand, until doing IFS, is just the emotional end of this. We can know this conceptually, but
Mhm.
feeling through it, because we carry all
Mhm.
this in our nervous system, we carry it in our mind. If I can get to know the part, like you're saying, notice it, understand it, know it, see what it needs, and feel with it, right? I'll always say to men, I'll say, just let the part know I'm here, I'm listening, I welcome you, s- I'm with you, right? And a lot of us aren't, especially as men, I think we're not taught the importance of just, you don't have to fix it, because guys will be like, okay, well, how do I fix it? You don't, just be
Yeah.
with it for a while and see if that shifts.
Mhm.
And it'll only take, a minute, maybe two. Oh, there's relaxing happening. And a
Yeah.
big part of that is, oh, this part of me feels seen now,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
Yeah, it's such a powerful thing. Is there anything more that you
Yeah.
have seen on that, or um,
Mhm.
have seen for people when it comes to this?
Well, I love how you're really creating such a beautiful visual for us of the power of being without an agenda to fix, figure it out, shine it up, make it work, get shiny, but just to be with this part of us exactly the way that it is. We're not saying what it's doing or feeling is good. It probably isn't, but offering it the gift of that relationship. And again, it all comes back to that healing presence of compassionate, non judgmental relationship. And especially as men, in our Western culture, we are not, our culture does not encourage men to even be aware of their emotions, let alone to be present with them. So this is really counterintuitive, and deeply courageous when men kind of go into this realm that where it's like the space, the final frontier. Only it's our internal space, and it takes a very courageous Western man to really bring this curious attention inside. And it is so profoundly healing and beautiful.
Hmm. One of the other example I was thinking of was, I had an experience fairly recently with kind of that procrastination behavior that you were talking about, right?
Mhm.
Where I noticed I have a part of me that I call the achiever, that's all about getting it done and task lists and ambitions, and I have goals and dreams and all this. All right, this is kind of this part's idea of this is what's going to make me feel like I'm enough or like I'm worth it.
Yeah.
Now, when that part is calmed and self is leading, it can just be who it is, ambition and the goals, and it loves all that, right? It's a wonderful part of me. But when I start to move into this part taking the lead and it's burdened and it gets in this manager role, then often what I'll have happen is that same kind of peacemaker, that comforter will come in on the firefighter end and start to sabotage what I'm doing, get me busy with little side quests and procrastinating and organizing things or doing mundane tasks that feel more safe and familiar, right? And I engaged with these parts because I'm just like, okay, hold on a second. What is going on here? Because for the last 30 minutes, I've been working on what's not important today. And I just need to take some time. Because again, if that achiever's in manager mode, it'll say, just keep work, just do the thing. And I'm like, okay, I got to take a minute. And what I realized was in working with these parts, this achiever is just like on hyperdrive, just go, accomplish. And then this peacemaker is like, that is a lot of pressure. And so I'm going to keep you busy with stuff that feels like less pressure.
Yes.
And really what that part was trying to get me to see is you're way hyped up. Like you are on overdrive, and I'm just trying to get you to slow down a little bit and pay attention and calm so that you can get more focused and feel more at ease. Then these parts can start to work together, actually, rather than working against each other. And that is a beautiful moment,
Yes. Yes. And this is such an important point that you make. When we have a polarization like that, where the one part is hyperachieve and the other part is distract and numb or, do mundane things, we really have to notice, know, and need with both of them, because often somewhere in what they are concerned would happen if they didn't push us to overachieve or to procrastinate, is that the other one would take over. So if we get to know the overachieving one and find out what are you concerned would happen if you didn't push me so hard to do all the things, we might learn, well, I'm afraid you do absolutely nothing. That procrastinator would take over and you'd sit on the couch and eat potato chips for the rest of your life. And if we get to know the one that's procrastinating and we find out, how are you trying to help me? What are you afraid would happen if you didn't take me over and make me procrastinate? It usually says, well, I'm afraid that hyper crazy overachieving one would run you into the ground, and you will be so exhausted. Your shoulders will never come out of your ears and your family will never see you. And that's not cool. And so they're really both, this polarization. It's important to tend to both sides, because if one steps away and we haven't worked with the other one, we can still be imbalanced, just from a different perspective.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in that process, what I didn't share is some of the deeper work that you're pointing to, which is the fears and the feelings of shame, right? The fears are, all the things that you shared, but also things that will come in for me that's often come in for me in this procrastination is, well, if you do keep pursuing these dreams and it does get bigger, who knows how much responsibility that might entail? Who knows how much bigger it might get? That occurred for me often with my pornography addiction that I had for years, because it's like, if I stop this, well, then I might actually get better and I might actually start to heal. And then my response, like my capacity is going to grow. And a part of me is really worried about what that might look like, because it's so, to bring it to the exile perspective, I would say that exile in me is just I'm not capable of doing all this. So there's a lot of internal work that needs to be done there layer by layer to get to understand these parts. So,
Yes. And what's incredibly profound to me is how many times both polarizations, each of the polarizations, are trying to protect the same exile. So the one that's trying to, just to go back to our previous example, work and achieve and prove and do all the things, maybe trying to protect, typically it might be an exile that feels I'm not enough. So I have to try and achieve to prove that I'm enough. And this one who's trying to protect us by procrastinating and not doing it is also trying to protect I'm not enough. It maybe fears, oh, if I put myself out there, it's not going to work. And then everybody will see I'm not enough. So it's better to just procrastinate and not get out there and let the whole world see that. And so often they're trying to protect the same vulnerability from two opposite sides, which is why that exile work, the trauma healing work, so to speak, is so critical, because we can't expect those parts to change or transform if we don't deal with what's driving them. It's why diets don't work and New Year's resolutions don't work and spending goals don't work if we haven't driven down into the core of what's driving it. If we haven't gone down to the core of what's driving it. Just saying, well, I'm just going to stop doing that is really wildly ineffective.
Yeah. And we'll stay emotionally blocked until we begin to work through layers. And it's like, I'll just force myself to get it done. It just doesn't work because these parts are like, nope, you're not seeing us. You're not paying attention. You haven't gotten to know us. And so it just takes sometimes a fairly simple work of, as you say, notice, no need, to just feel into it for a while, get to understand and unblock a bit so that self can come back in to the lead and we can actually be who we want to be, do what we want to do, and live according to our values. And yeah, so good. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Jenna. Such a powerful conversation. I'm so excited for your book. I've pre-ordered it. I loved Altogether You, and I look forward to reading Move Toward. So I encourage everybody to get out, buy the book. At this point, when this launches, it should be, I think, a week until your book launches. I think it's April 21st. Yeah.
Yes, 21st. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. And for people who are thinking, gosh, this sounds great, but I don't know how to do this, not to fear. Every chapter in the book is designed to walk you through it step by step. Each chapter has personal hands-on exercises and journaling or small group questions so that I just will hold your hand through every step of the process and you don't have to figure anything out yourself. And I'm working on filming a video curriculum to accompany that, just like I have for my Altogether You book, so that if you'd like to have me guiding you through it on demand on video, that'll be available on my website as well. And my website, for people who can't spell my name, which is most everyone, is movetoward.com.
It's so funny how long I mispronounced your last name, Jenna. It's Riemersma, correct? Riemersma, yes.
Well said. I have friends who've been friends with me for 30 years who still can't say it correctly. So you're doing well.
Thank you. This is my biggest accomplishment yet. So that's awesome. Okay, so it was movetoward.com, correct? People can go.
Movetoward.com, or if you're really adventurous, JennaRiemersma.com.
Yes. So good. Well, thank you so much for your time, Jenna. Such a joy to have you on, and I'm sure this will be really helpful to people.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here.
Thanks for listening to No More Desire. It's a genuine blessing for me to do the work that I do, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you, my listeners, so thank you. If you've enjoyed today's episode, do me a favor. Follow this podcast, hit the notification bell, and shoot me a rating. The more people who do this, the more men this podcast will reach. So take a few minutes of your time and hit those buttons. And if you want to take your sobriety to the next level, check out my free workshop, The 8 Keys to Lose Your Desire for Porn, or my free ebook, The 10 Tools to Conquer Cravings. These are specialized pieces of content that will give you practical exercises and applied solutions to overcome porn addiction. And you can find them at nomordesire.com. As a listener of the No More Desire podcast, you are part of a worldwide movement of men who are breaking free of porn to live more impactful, meaningful, and selfless lives. So keep learning, keep growing, and keep building that recovery mindset and lifestyle. God bless. Everything expressed on the No More Desire podcast are the opinions of the host and participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of a qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.